All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. 2.0 adjustments to the agenda. Is there need for any adjustments? 3.0 audience and communication. I assume many people will have questions and comments about the budget. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to say unrelated to the budget? Can you say your name, Rowan, even though?
Oh, yes, sorry, Rowan Beck, parent of CCS students, 3 of them, or 2 actually now. I don't know if this is a budget question or not, but we received an email that Audrey is stepping down, and I would like to know what model the school is going to follow. If we are going to be hiring another principal, or if we are going to be getting an assistant. But I'd like to know what that is.
Okay.
And it will affect the budget, obviously, in some way, so I don't know if this is a budget question or if this is just, I would like to know what's going to happen.
Okay. I believe it's the will of the board to continue, at least for the near future, with the co-principal model. And I believe that unless the board states otherwise tonight, that the position will be posted shortly by central office. I also believe that the board, it's the will of the board, though, please speak up if I'm wrong, that we plan to budget that line item the same. We don't know what the qualifications and experience of the person who may be our first choice to fill that position, so we were advised to keep that budget amount as is.
But don't you feel that that's a pretty high ticket number for the budget when the town itself is speaking against it? Or some of the town, I should say. Like in Audrey's email that she sent to us, at the end, she said, I can't remember it exactly, I could pull it up on my phone and bring it out, but she said that it provided an opportunity for the board to explore other options for what could take place. And I believe that it is fiscally responsible for you guys to figure something out, because we've been seeing a 10% increase for the last 5 years on our tax dollars. And we've been given an opportunity here that you could maybe go back to the old model. You could look at a dean of students. There are a lot of options that you could be looking at. And her salary is a big ticket number. Well, and I understand that you need to look at what's best for the school, but I believe that you need to look for what's best for the taxpayers as well. And I'm a parent here, so I'm kind of in a tight spot myself. I mean, I like Audrey. I think she's done a great job, but I think she's giving you guys a gift to actually look at what you're doing and do something different.
Thank you. Anybody else? Jill? And maybe, thanks.
I was reading back in the minutes, and this is about the bond vote that you want to put out for the building. And it said something about having somebody from the architect company or the company that you're working with to come in and explain maybe to the public or to everybody about what's going on and why, why you feel, $409,000 that we're going to have to put in front of the taxpayers is the right price and what they're doing. And I didn't see, has that happened? Have you had somebody come and speak to the audience or to the public before you go and pass a bond that you're going to have the taxpayers vote on? So we're educated on what's going on with that?
So there is not an architect here tonight, obviously. But as far as especially the roofing issues, I think we've spoken about those for the past couple of years, and I think they're pretty clear. I think the same with the lighting, which is sort of a safety issue in the 69 wing. The big ticket item that I think they could really help talk about more would be the elevator. And the elevator is an issue because it's a code issue. And it's a code issue because if it breaks, we can't fix it, and we're going to need to replace it right away. If it's the will of the board tonight that we pass a request for a bond at the March meeting, I think there'll be more discussions about that in future meetings as well, to talk about it some more, to explain it maybe even a little more clear than we have going forward. We have talked about it at the board on a number of occasions.
And I think too, part of it was that we wanted an architect to come and give us information about all the other stuff as well. Is there a possibility we could close down this part of the building, reallocate the space we have since we have issues here? So I think that is sort of the long-term plan to look at that. And if we do indeed pass a bond tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, the town isn't paying us $409,000. What it would allow us to do is go out and borrow the money, and then that would be amortized over
15 years.
15 years. So the it's the payment of down of principal and interest would be included in our budgets going forward until that was paid off. But it wouldn't be, it would be something that would hit your wallets the following year, I guess.
Yeah, the other thing to remember is the article is authorization to borrow for the board. It doesn't necessarily stipulate that you must go out and borrow $409,000. You specify the amount in the May-June timeframe to the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank, and then actually borrow the money in the next fiscal year or so. So you've got some time if the scope shifts a bit to size your borrowing more to exactly what you want to do as you get closer to summer.
Jill, what you've heard is that this really breaks down into two things. The roofs and the lighting and the elevator are pretty cut and dried. And the $409,000 figure is an estimate. There will be bids, but that's what we expect, more or less. The rest of that story is the ongoing conversation that's lurking in the background about other possibilities. And at the moment, those possibilities don't add up to the $6.5 million that we talked about before, but they're still going to be substantial. And what the community should be concerned about is how substantial and when, and the additional costs that that's going to represent. But for now, it's just roofs and lights and elevators, and there's not a lot of latitude with those things.
I agree. We've all seen.
So basically, it's a patch.
Well, it's not a patch. They're going to replace this roof. And
But there's a big picture.
yeah.
And I think that talking to people in our town, that after we all rallied and we put the new addition on at, this building, that people are just a little frustrated that, we rallied and we did all this, and now all of a sudden, it's like, oh, this is falling apart. So I'm hoping that, my concern, I guess, is we're using the same architects, and, if they didn't, I feel like they might have not steered us in the total right way the first time, that, we want to make sure we can trust them this time to make sure we have a long-range plan.
Well, that's a valid point, and the answer, I think, is that the board needs to present the kind of opportunity that you've asked about prior to March, so people can hear that conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Did anyone else have any comments or questions unrelated to the budget?
Well, I actually just wanted back.
Can you just say your name, Carrie?
I'm
For
sorry.
the record, sorry.
Carrie Spear. And I just would want to say that Jill and Rowan and I just want you to know that there is a large variety of people here in our town that are very concerned about the school, not just our school, but the statewide. We all know that it's a statewide issue that we have. And we can solve some of that just in our own town with cooperation. And we are kind of leery of going into construction. We know that we have to have construction at the school. We want the school to be here forever. But right now, we're in a really very interesting financial part in time. I think we have the declining school rate, which we all hear all the time, but we're also in a forward moving with our own town plan. I would like to make sure that we're talking well about our school as we go forward in our town plan. Are we enough? I'm not quite sure. But I just want you to know that the less that you can spend for the next few years, the better off we all will be, because we would build confidence in what the board could do, and our taxpayers could have some relief, and our children will still be loved so much and a great education because you're all great educators. Nobody wants anything bad other than we want to cut some spending. And you just really, I wish it was my husband doing this speech right now because he gave it to me a week or so ago, and I was like, gosh darn it, if we all heard that. It was reasonably well said, and no begrudging anyone. We just need to save some money. And so if you would please consider where that can be done as we go forward for the next few years, as we're also building other parts of our town and our lives. And it's just a beautiful place, as we all know, but we all have to get along, and we all have to live here for a very long period of time, many of us. You know, we want 30 more years here, but we can't have everything going up every year. It just needs, I ask that on behalf of a lot of people who have come into my store, as we all know that I have, and they've expressed this same thing. We have a concern, but, you know, we love the kids, we love what you do, but just stop spending so much money right now so we can make it all go around in a good way. So thank you.
Okay, 4.1, do we have someone from the association? 4.1 is association input regarding contemplated reductions. Okay. 4.2, budget overview of proposed budget. So, I think it has to be, yeah, I think it has to include, because we do have partial reductions in staffing, so we have to put on the agenda to allow the association to come in and weigh in. Okay, 4.2 budget overview.
I'm willing to go through the sheets that were part of the packet that they mailed out, or I mailed out. It isn't necessarily any new information, but it might serve a good purpose just to kind of step through with what's there. I also have a revised announced tuition sheet. The one that was in your packet has been updated to reconcile with the numbers that are in these pages here. Okay, does anybody need a copy of what was sent to each of you? Does the audience need one? Sure, there you go.
And there's the tuition sheets too.
Anybody need the tuition sheet?
So I don't know if the board wants to hear this again. We have the adjusted baseline that includes all of the decision packets from administration, both the additions and subtractions. And I'll tell you, I asked Bob, just as a sort of way to jump off, to figure out what number we will arrive at. And I asked him if we applied $180,000 of our fund balance towards revenue and took $130,000 in reductions. And I just sort of looked at a number of things that it seemed from our discussions that it was unlikely the board would choose to fund this year, some of the requested additions. And in that case, our total budget would be 1% less than our current fiscal year budget, with a budget of $7,433,150 on a $300,000 assessed house. For someone who does not have any income sensitivity, they would have a savings of only $20.70, but it is a budget that would be lower than what we have now. So I don't know if the board wants to go through line item by line item. Anyone have an opinion about how to move forward with arriving at a number?
How much did you ask about applying for the
180,000. So we have, so we have a fund balance of 442. We're estimated to finish with an additional 180, and sort of with some input from Eric about, talking about what a number should be. That's a number I pulled out. That's not a number we have to apply, but with the feeling being that we should probably have about 300 or so in reserve, and that it might not be wise to apply the entire surplus to this year in case we can't realize that same surplus for the following. But we could certainly entertain any, we can use any amount of that fund balance.
Yeah, I think that was. To Christian's point, it's currently 442. This year would add another 180 if things
Hopefully.
finish the way that they're supposed to, based on how they look now. That's 622. And then the question is where, as a percentage of our budget or as a sort of appropriate measure of what the balance should look like, 622 is probably quite a bit more than historically we've had or that we would foreseeably need. So if we work backwards from, a target to get the fund balance down to something like 3.5% of our budget, that would mean a reduction of 360,000. Again, to Kristen's point, thought being that we'd want to stagger that over a couple of years in case, like this year we had a $180,000 balance in our favor. Some years it's negative, so we don't want to try to sort of take it all in one whack.
So how
And
much, I'm sorry.
And I was just going to say, just to add on to that, that there was also a feeling that there may be items in the budget that, that proposed items that we were asked to fund that maybe we would feel comfortable sort of saying we can take a chance and not fund them if we know we still have that additional amount in the fund balance. So it's sort of it provides a cushion. So I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I answered my own question. Sorry. Reading comprehension.
All right, so should we just go through the budget? So on the, this is maybe the third page in the packet. At the top, it says fiscal year 2016 budget change worksheet. And I'm assuming there's no discussion on the top 5 items, which all represent reductions. That's .20 FTE budget error through .2 FTE world language. Is there a need to discuss those items? On to the next one, .4 FTE health educator.
We have to keep that to realize some of the deductions, so.
Mind speaking up a little bit? I can hear
Sorry.
you pretty good, but it's hard. I just want to be able to really understand what you're talking about. And
Sure.
so I see microphones, but I don't hear them. I'm sorry.
Okay.
can hear
So I
pretty
said
well.
that the top 5 items are all reductions to the budget, so. No, I'm on the third page. The top of the page says FY 2016 budget change worksheet. Yes.
The first 3 are adjustments to the baseline, as a product of information that developed after the baseline budget. They're not related to decision packets.
Correct.
Just while we're on that topic, maybe those 3 technology line items, just before the break in the page, 14,400, 18,000, 18,000.
Yes.
Those, again, just so I'm clear, those are amounts that relate to what was originally reflected in the baseline budget, which was too high a number. And when, remember, Bob, you had a page?
Yes, I think you're on the.
Yeah, so that's that.
Had we known information 3 months after we started this process, those would have been in your baseline.
Yeah, and that's just sort of an error in
Yep.
carrying over the algorithm and the tech spending from
Correct.
the year prior. Okay, so that's those 3. So those are all, none of them is a decision packet. Those are just corrections to the baseline.
And then the next, the .1 FTE reduction in school counselor was recommended by the administration because of the addition of the health educator. The school counselor have been providing some of the health education to our students. And the .2 world language, as we've heard, is, this was the first year our middle level teachers were teaching foreign language in 4th grade, so they did a co-teaching model. They do not need to continue that next year, so we can reduce world language position by .2. So is it, I don't know if we should just go through line by line and say what people want to fund thereafter. Do people want to add the .4 health educator?
Yes.
That was tied to the .1 school counselor,
Yes.
as well as the .2 SAP counselor? down
Yes,
towards the
I'm
bottom?
sorry, there is further down a .2 FTE reduction in the SAP counselor, who also is providing some of that health instruction.
So those three are sort of a package deal, I guess, right?
Right.
So we should probably vote on the licensed health educator
Okay?
and just have that behind us, so that would make all the other things valid, right? So,
Yes. So Mark is yes, Susan, yes, Eric? Clyde?
I don't have a comment on this at the moment.
Okay. I'm a yes. The next item is the 1.0 behavior specialist. Does anyone want to include that in this budget? Okay, so we are going to subtract that out, Bob. The next item is 2.0 FT non-intensive para educators for kindergarten. Does anyone on the board want to include that in the budget? Okay.
Are we gonna are we gonna be able to talk about this ourselves? Do we want to educate ourselves? I don't know. I don't know how the
Yeah, I thought
meetings
we would go
work.
through this and then maybe
Take
we're
comments.
taking a poll and then maybe get comments.
Yeah.
Though I'm not, the behavior specialist was a recommendation from the administration seeing an increased need. I think, I speak for myself, but I think there's a feeling on the board that we need to get a little more information on this, and it could be something we'd contemplate in a future budget, but not at this time. The non-intensive paras for kindergarten is if the class size exceeds 38. There's a recommendation that we have a paraeducator in the class. We've changed our demographer. We had someone who was figuring out how many kids are likely to show up in kindergarten, and that person has since retired. The new numbers showed was quite different, quite a bit higher. So there was a feeling perhaps we should budget for the possible need for those paras. I think the board feels like we have enough of a cushion that we can sort of wait and see whether or not we need that.
Okay, and so why I interrupted was I just want to understand how we're going to proceed. Are we just, when does comment come? If there's any comment, you're going to go through this page and then we'll go back and discuss
Sure.
things after you've taken out yay or nay of what?
Right, and my
I
thinking
just
really,
wanted to
Carrie, is that
understand how the
if
meetings-
people are upset that we're gonna spend money on something and we're not planning to anyway, we can make this meeting a little more efficient. So
I
you can
agree.
sort of see how
Yeah.
how it looks like we're coming out, and then before we make a vote, we'll hear input from the community and have a chance to change our minds if
Absolutely.
If that
I just
happens.
wanted to know how it was going to work, that's all.
Okay.
That's all it was. Thank you.
Sure. The next line item, 907 for tuition reimbursements, I think we don't really have a choice on that. That was, again, an accounting little blip. $2,000 for wireless connectivity.
I'm yes on all those technology line items, wireless, software, Chromebook, iPad.
Okay. I want to do it, I think we should do the connectivity, the software, and then do the hardware separately, just because there might be, I think that might be different votes for different people. So Mark's yes for wireless. Susan? Eric? Clyde? Okay. 7,700 for software. As we continue to further integrate our curriculum, there's an increased demand for software to support that integration, so that's why there was a request for that addition. Mark?
Yes.
I'm sorry, you're first every time
That's
tonight.
right, yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Eric? Clyde? Okay. And then for the Chromebooks, for those of you who haven't been here, what Audrey and Greg did is break out the additional technology that they think would best support our students, and it's 3 different line items. One directed at grades 4 through 8, one at 1, 2, and then some iPads. There was further discussion at board meetings that, you know, this is what they think would be ideal, but that the board could fund a certain amount that didn't have to be linked to any one of those, and then the administration going forward would pick sort of would prioritize what they need first and fund that based on that amount. So for that reason, I don't know if we want to go through item by item, or if people have an idea about a specific number different from that total. And that total is 24,750 for all 3 items. I don't have that sheet with me.
It's 50. Yep.
50.
No.
No.
Because Chromebooks are not that expensive.
Right, they're $324.
They're actually less than that because I bought one for my daughter for Christmas to go with what she learns on at school here, and it was less than that. Just so you know, Amazon.com, gotta
All
love
right.
it.
Well, once we fund some money, one way or the other, they definitely will.
But don't you like research prices before you throw these numbers out? I mean, that's what we do in business.
Yes, and those numbers were based on estimates from the beginning of December when we got the decision packets.
But I purchased it in November. And I'm just saying that, like, like, I'd like to know how many there are gonna be. Like, are you purchasing 10, are you purchasing 20? or are you
All right,
purchasing-
so we're purchasing 50 Chromebooks.
Okay.
And it's, so, I forget what the total is there, at the $18,000 level. 50 Chromebooks,
And believe
and,
me, I have nothing against technology.
no, I understand, but, you know, Chromebooks come in 1,000 different flavors.
Right, because
and we want-
it's the system that you're buying.
Right. And you also want it to last for a certain number of years, so you don't want to buy the one that's already 5 years old. So we're not buying the most expensive ones, obviously, but we're also not buying the ones from 2008. So 324 is, and again, that number changes too, you know that, it changes
Right.
next week, so it's,
16,250, so you're saying you spend $11,000 on iPads? Is that-
No.
yeah, it's,
Yeah. So, yeah, the amount requested for iPads was 6,500. So before we delve too much further in, is there a desire to break these out line by line, or do people want to propose a set amount to additionally fund technology or hardware, or to not fund anything? Clyde, what are you thinking?
Thinking that I do not thoroughly understand the connection between the expenditure and improved learning
Okay.
over over our current condition.
So is that a zero then?
Well, unless somebody has an explanation that is concise.
Okay. Eric?
Yeah, so I guess I was, and again, it's, you know, I'm not a tech educator, right? But I was sort of less compelled by the iPad purchase than I was the Chromebook purchase. It seemed like, and maybe, given Clyde's hesitancy, you know, Greg could spend a couple minutes with us, but kind of going over that. But my recollection was that, you know, the Chromebooks are being used very often in the classroom. There's a need for them for standardized testing, which is moving, you know, to an online platform. So, you know, maybe it makes sense to spend a brief amount of time just recapping some of those needs.
Sure, I could do that. So the Chromebooks, so the idea behind The Chromebook editions and the iPad editions are basically to increase teacher and student access to these technology pieces that they can integrate very easily throughout the day. So they're not having to coordinate with their teammates about when they can use them. They're more accessible, so they can use them at liberty at any point during the day. The more devices we have in relation to the students we have, the more flexible the teachers can integrate the technology. We want teachers to not have to be thinking about how am I going to coordinate the use of this device, and just be thinking about how rich can I make this instruction, and how's the device going to make the instruction even more rich. So as I've said previously, I want to make sure that the board understands that we are not buying these devices so that we can take SBAC. We could take SBAC tomorrow if we had to. Really what we want to do is make sure that students have access to the appropriate technology for the world they're living in, and that the instruction they're getting is using the technology that's appropriate for the world we're living in. Currently, when you look at the 3rd and 4th grade teams, the 3rd grade team right now, next year will be the 4th grade team, they're sharing one cart of 20 Chromebooks. I feel it's working out. It's great that the 4th graders are on the Chromebooks this year. It's a big success, but they don't have adequate access. The 3rd grade team, which is a 2-teacher team, is sharing one cart between the 2 teachers. So 20 of these Chromebooks would be to add a cart for each of those teams. So essentially, the iPads that we have now, we have 40 iPads in the library, in addition to a sprinkling of singular iPads in classrooms, but the 40 iPads that we have in the library are always signed out. They're signed out more than their demand is higher than what we have. So, whenever I hear a teacher say, oh, I would do more with that, but it's hard to get my hands on them. That's an indicator to me that we don't have sufficient devices.
What classrooms are those used mostly in?
The iPads are used more in the primary grades, but they are used throughout the building. They are used K-8.
World Language uses them a lot too at the middle level.
Yep.
No, it just sounded, from previous discussions that there was increasing use of the Chromebooks, and that they were a very central part of the process during the day. And I just didn't know, particularly to the extent that we're looking at filling out the Chromebooks in the primary grades, if that was sort of displacing the need for the iPads, or...
Yeah, totally different interface, right? So the 2nd graders, 1st graders, 3rd graders can do things on the iPad that they wouldn't be able to do on a Chromebook device, like an interactive writing app called StoryKit, where they can either draw a picture on the tablet or take a picture of something and then write on that tablet, type into it, or write with their hand, or speak into it, and in a matter of a few lessons have a digital book with their illustration, their text, and possibly their voicing it over. And there's not a lot of instruction that goes into that in terms of having the student navigate it, because that's the way the iPad's set up. Or that isn't the kind of application you would have for the Chromebook. The Chromebook's going to have different applications. So.
Yeah. No, and I see how the Chromebook is integral to how kids produce and deliver their work to the teacher, and
right.
And it was less clear to me how the iPads fit into the whole process. But.
What I had said last meeting is that, if the board wants to consider those 3 pieces together, I believe they add up to $24,750. And if they wanted to reduce that number, then what I would do is I would go back to the technology team and say, okay, we have less money to deal with. How are we going to redeploy those resources in the way we best, rather than think of these as, oh, we're not going to get those 40 Chromebooks.
Rowan, can you give me a specific example of what your child does with this Chromebook?
She does Google Docs
for her papers. She plays mathematical games, she plays reading games and writing games on it. It's just more useful for her, so she's not using my computer, and it's, you know, I researched them. You can get them for good ones, like a Samsung, which is a really good, you know, good version of it, and it's no more than $175 with shipping. And if you want to get 20 of them, it's about $3,000. And
Just-
you're,
No, you finished, sorry.
you know, I think technology is something that the school needs to address because it's very important. I mean, I can run my business from an iPad, but you guys, you gotta really look at the numbers. I mean, as parents, we go out and we make purchases and we really look at the numbers and we research things that we're getting our kids. And when I hear that you're gonna spend this much money, and I know for a fact that you can get a really decent Chromebook for $175, I'm like, and I'm only asking these questions because as a business owner, I just went through, and there are so many things that I would love to do as a business, but it's just not an option for us.
So just a point about the Chromebook pricing. As Mark mentioned, there are a variety of different Chromebooks. They
Right.
come in all shapes and sizes. One of the pieces that's an important spec for us is the screen size. So we made a deliberate decision to go with a 14-inch Chromebook made by HP, where a lot of other folks were saving a couple of bucks. It wasn't a lot. It was probably less than $50 per device to get the smaller 11-inch screens. What we've heard hands down is people wish they had bought the 14-inch screens. The SBAC assessment is set up where you have a lot of situations where you have a split screen, where there's text on one side of the screen and a question on the other side of the screen, or a mathematical problem on one side and a question on the other. And when the screen size is crucial to the experience you're getting when you're using that device. So screen size is really important. What I would say is that we're going to spec out exactly what we want in the Chromebook, and then we're going to say, where can we get the best deal on that spec? And we're going to go with the lowest priced Chromebook that meets that spec.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, not to get too deep in the weeds on Chromebooks, but I mean, having just bought one myself, that is a big jump in price point, the screen size. So, and if that's an important spec for us, then that, I think, you know, I think we're probably in the right ballpark with, I'm guessing. I don't think they're, you know, being irresponsible in terms of,
No, I'm not
You
saying
know-
that anybody's being irresponsible, but I am asking as a taxpayer who's watched my taxes go up 10% every single solitary year. And with the federal government putting in an increase this year, it's getting really hard. And I'm a business owner, and I have to look at a budget every single year when I'm trying to make a plan for how we're gonna move forward. And I'm just asking that you guys do the same thing. And I have kids in the school, and you guys are doing an amazing job. And it's really hard for me to sit here and be like this. I've never been like this once. I've always supported you guys 100%. But this year, I'm just kind of like, what's going on? And maybe it's because I'm more aware because I'm having to plan my own budgets.
Greg, pricing of these things aside, your last comments, there was a little bit of a point of confusion.
Okay.
On one hand, you said we don't need these things for the SBAC. On the other hand, you alluded to the nature of the question and answer device.
Right?
So are you saying, yeah, we don't need them, but it's that much better with them? Because
Well, we need, the SBAC is being taken on a secure browser on a computer. So we need what I meant by we don't need, we have enough devices in the building
Okay.
right now.
So.
But we want to buy devices that are set up well for that testing need. The increased screen size obviously has other advantages.
Okay, and then moving beyond that, the utility of the thing, I mean, Rowan apparently bought her so her child can do things at home. What is the essential nature of the item for things that have to occur in school as opposed to can be done outside of school with homework or however you address those things these days. In other words, is this absolutely essential to whatever it is that they have to do during the school day, taking advantage of the instructors, facilitators whom we pay? Is that question clear? Is that understandable?
Not 100%.
All right, they come to school, the teachers are here, or
Right.
whatever we call them these days,
Right.
instructors. And then certain things have to happen during the day according to their teaching plans. Okay, what is it about their teaching plan for the day in class that requires that they have these devices as opposed to doing the thing some other way?
Right. So obviously, we're functioning today without them. So not everything about the teaching plan does require them. But we want teachers to be integrating not just the use of Chromebooks, but be providing instruction in a way that really takes in the digital age that we're living in, and that's going to prepare kids for the world they're going to come out of school into, and be designing their instruction in a way that integrates this technology. So we could be doing more of that than we are now if there's easier access to the devices and the tool.
Question, you may asterisk my position on this.
What does that mean?
That means maybe, as opposed to just.
Okay, and maybe funding at the entire amount requested, okay.
I'd like to say one thing about the usability, because you were asking about do they really need this type of technology? I can tell you that the kids, my daughter's in 5th grade, and they do need the technology for some of their homework assignments. And so if a child doesn't have access at home, he or she would have to do it during school, during their independent study. They have a Word file that they have to add to every week, and it has to be online on the Google Docs. So they do need them, I think, to accomplish their work that's being assigned. So I think it's a very realistic expectation for us to have them.
But don't they have access to those during the school day? I mean, you said you have some. You know, what I heard was it's not convenient for the teachers to make a plan with each other about how to share them. And maybe I
So,
got that wrong.
just to stop, Julie and Tammy, can you both just identify yourselves since we're on camera and it makes it easier for the.
Julie Sigler.
Thank you.
Tammy Hall.
I just
and-
want to, I mean, he was just asking about usability.
Yeah.
And I mean, just after school today, my daughter had a play date, and there was a couple girls over, and we had a laptop and 2 iPads out, and they were doing their homework. So they're user-friendly, and I think we need them. So I see them being used. That's just my comment.
I'm sorry. I think that as a mother whose child no longer goes here, you know, the rest of us in the community are looking around going, okay, so these are great, and if they have them at home, let them use them at home, but why does everyone have to keep paying? We really do want you to reduce the budget this year.
Thank you. All right, so circling back, we have an asterisk. Eric, did you?
Yeah, I mean, in the context of the whole budget, I would much rather find other places to trim than technology, so to the extent we can find other places,
Okay.
And
Susan?
I'd like to see a lower number than the 24,750.
Okay. Do you have a number in mind?
I do not, but if we did, line item by line item, I would, take out the 6,500 for the, 20 iPads for K2. I mean, if that's how you want to slash, but I just think that number is really high.
Okay. And Mark,
I support them. I have a 4th grader and a 6th grader at the school. They use them every day. These are in the classroom. They're part of the learning experience. It is the world they're going into. I'm kind of with Eric on this. If we're going to find places to cut in the budget, I'd find other places than the technology part.
Yeah, and it's not just the world they're going into, it's the high school they're going into.
Yeah,
It's a much bigger part of their daily life in high school.
And since you've all chimed in, I will as well. I felt really torn about this one, and I initially was thinking that we should just trim this back. I feel kind of moved by what we heard from Greg, and my overall feeling that really it isn't an extra that we're giving kids. It's an integral part of how we're delivering instruction, and they will fall behind if we don't keep up with technology. So I might be willing to trim that back a bit, but it sounds like we're in agreement for funding at least the bulk of the requested items. So perhaps we want to circle back to technology after we look at the remainder. The next item is $4,500 for science supplies. And this is an increased need because of the upcoming next generation
NGSS,
science standards that are going to be in place
2017.
in 2017. So, Clyde? Eric? Susan?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm a yes also. The next item is $3,500 for Four Winds materials. And this, we've been requested by we've traditionally failed to fund this line item, though we've had Four Winds and its predecessor here for years. And we've asked the PTO to pick that up. The PTO keeps coming back to us and saying it really is a part of your curriculum and you should pay for it. So that's where we are torn. It's an item that we feel easy to sort of drop. So that's sort of the background. Mark, this time?
Yes.
Susan?
No.
Eric?
Yes.
Clyde?
Yes.
All right. The next item is the $25,000 SURF transfer. And this is a recommendation that because we have an aging building with a roof about to fall in right this second, that it would probably be financially prudent to fund some money towards a construction fund so that if something happens, if a roof falls in, we have a fund that if we don't need it this year, we can build on it and use that if the water pipe breaks, if we have pink water, if, these things that come up that we're not budgeted for, that would provide a cushion. So that was the reason for that request. I'll start with Clyde this time.
On the surface, it seems like a completely reasonable idea. As Mark knows, and probably some of you know, the expense of the items that we typically have to deal with really will not be accommodated with this amount of money. Bob, what's our fund balance now?
440? 442 plus 180.
My problem with this is the philosophy behind the thing. I mean, on the one hand, we've got quite a fund balance. On the other hand, we're saying, well, we still need to put this money aside. The part about this that's going to be confusing and confusing to you folks is, I'm going to, as this goes along, I'll talk about one thing or another and give my opinion, but I'm probably going to vote against the entire budget for more esoteric reasons. But in the specific case, the problem is that we used to make this SURF transfer from excess. And if we're at a point where that's no longer a good way to go about it, you really got to look at how we got to that point. And that's the point that these folks are talking about, which is the yearly jump in the taxes and all the expenses that go along with that. So for the moment, I'm going to say yes about this. But as I said, it's unlikely I'm going to support this whole budget for a variety of reasons, from rehiring a co-principal to some other things we'll discuss or won't discuss. But for now, yes, on the SURF transfer.
Eric?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, on the one hand, we have sort of a substantial O&M budget that is meant to, I suppose, account for certain routine maintenance and repairs and whatnot. And then we've got a bond issue to replace structurally important sort of items. So this piece, to me, I guess, to me, I just look at it as a sort of part and parcel of the overall fund balance. So if we thought we wanted our overall fund balance to be X, you can say, I'll take a piece of that and call it SURF, and take the rest of it and call it the general balance. But I would not, you'd need that much less in your general balance, I think, if you had 25 in a SURF fund. So I guess my answer is, if we want to do it that way, then that's that much less that we need to end up with out of our general balance. In terms of, we can, spend down or not spend down, we can apply some of our general balance this year. And the end point of the reductions in our fund balance, if it, pick a number, if we wanted to have 300 now, you can have 275 in the general balance and 25 in the SURF.
Okay. Does that all wash out the same? Okay. Susan?
So in an effort to reduce the budget, I'd say no. I think it's a great idea, but not the year to do it.
Okay.
I mean, just to be clear, over the 2-year period, it would be a wash in the budget. In my mind, right? Either be, we could apply more. We could apply more of our fund balance and do the SURF, or we could apply less of the fund balance and not do the SURF, but it would kind of be a wash. So I guess that begs the question of, is there a compelling sort of accounting reason to do it this way?
There is, if you take a longer-term view and you don't believe that every year you're going to end up with a favorable balance from your current year. You as a board became comfortable with tactically using a favorable yield from your last major construction project and spread how you were going to use that in the facility over 3 or 4 years. And it was kind of a nice cushion to have to allow you to take care of stuff that you hadn't budgeted for. And when that ran out, it would have been nice to have a little more. So I think this was put in, correct me if I'm wrong, put in to kind of address that need. You're exactly right that you can address funding it either in the budget or at the end of the year with favorable balance you have left.
Yeah, I guess my was kind of when we had the conversation about you could do with a little bit less of a balance when we've sort of spread the risk of the special needs kid. We had that discussion about the CSSU aggregating up the special ed and all that.
Yes.
So each individual school didn't need as much.
Yes.
To me, this is the same thing. If you've got money tucked away for construction, you don't need as much as a cushion in your general fund balance.
Yeah. Some taxpayers might object that if you every year spent out of favorable performance and may via transfer $50,000 from your budget on capital equipment, they could rightly object that you probably should have that in your budget rather than, doing it creatively at the end of each year. But you're not necessarily all the way there yet.
So I mean, sort of my idea, right? Part came to you with it, but so I think it's responsible budgeting to have this set aside for stuff that comes up. I don't care how we do it, if we do it through here or if we do it through a balance transfer in June. It's just something that should exist as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. I'm of the same opinion. I think we should take it out of this budget and sort of, but keep it in our minds that, we need to figure out long-term how we go forward and do that. Great.
Discussions with the board and the facilities committee.
Next item is $9,000 transportation communications equipment. As many of you know, we don't own our buses. We have a contract with Betcha Transit. Right now, the school cannot communicate directly with the buses. And obviously, we don't even if the bus drivers have a cell phone, cell coverage is spotty, and they shouldn't be on the phone while they're driving our children. So this was a request to get equipment on the buses that allows the office to communicate directly with the buses. And is that number still the same? Is it 9,000?
Well, I have been working diligently with the bus company, who's working with the Radio North, and I have yet to hear back from them. What I'm hearing lately is that they think we can do it for less than that.
Okay.
But I haven't been able to get them to give me a number. So I would think we'd be able to do this for $5,000 or less, based on the new information I have, but I don't have a quote to give the board.
Okay. And was that, was there also discussion with the fire department, or was that a different?
And we were waiting to hear back from them too, on their new radios. Because there's a possibility that we could use the same system.
I did speak with Chris Davis, and we talked mostly about the idea of sharing, possibly collaborating with antenna space and repeater space, but we're not able to take advantage of any of their radio equipment to help us, other than the fact of maybe an antenna here and there. But this new avenue that is being pursued right now involves using the equipment that's currently on the buses and adding a base station and an antenna on the roof of the school. So and then possibly what's called a repeater in addition to that. So it's the repeater that is going to be the bigger ticket item, and then where you put the repeater. As Chris Davis will tell you, it's only as good as the antenna you put it on. So wish I had a better number, but what I can tell you is, with a fair high degree of confidence, it will be probably a smaller number than $9,000.
Okay. Clyde?
Did not go first last time.
All right. Mark?
No.
No, okay. Eric?
Yeah, no, I don't know that it's hugely urgent, and it sounds like we might be in a better place next year to get our arms around what this looks like in terms of collaborating with the fire department if we feel like we really need it.
Okay. Susan?
No.
All right, I guess that's out. And $10,000 security cameras. And before we sort of pull, do we have any idea how much vandalism has cost us in the last, year or two? Is there a way to estimate? I should have asked you in advance.
No. The vandalism has mostly come in the form of damage to the fields due to tire tracks, people driving their cars in the fields. And we've had some things happen on the roof that, luckily to this point, we don't know if any of our leaks are as a result of people walking around on the roof. We couldn't say that. But up to this point, the vandalism that's been done on the roof has been mostly graffiti and creative art with the stones that are up there. So it fortunately hasn't cost us a lot of money.
Okay.
But if the conditions were different, when a truck got on the field and the fields were wet, the meter would go pretty quick, because what we found last time is because the ground was hard, the damage done to the field was minimal.
Thank you. All right, Clyde.
No, I don't think there's going to be a cause and effect between having the security cameras and preventing the damage, and once the damage is done, odds are you're not going to recover it from whoever did it. The cost of the litigation would be higher than probably the cost of the repair. I think that if our insurance doesn't cover it, we should either be talking to a different insurance company or just live with it, because I don't think the security cameras will prevent it.
Eric? No. Susan?
No.
Mark? No. All right, that one's out. Yes. Yes, please say your name, though, for the camera.
That did not include potential update for the front entrance security camera, is that right? That was
That's part of
separate.
the operating
Correct.
O&M budget,
Correct.
correct?
Correct, that did not include that.
Yes.
I guess I have a question for the board, or maybe from the board for Bob. I think we wanted at some point to revisit the baseline budget number for fuel oil.
Oh, thank you.
You want to comment on that? Yes.
So for the audience's knowledge, we have
was okay
they
with
project
your
out what they
reply to
think
me.
fuel oil will cost. Eric had raised at a meeting that with the lower cost of oil these days, is there a way we could budget less?
So we did, what we did, Eric, was Martha helped me look at what we're spending in oil now and what we think we're going to use. And we expect that by the end of the year, we'll spend $20,000 to $25,000 less than budgeted. So as far as taking that to a baseline number, that would require predicting a rack price. So we based it.
Well, the baseline also requires predicting a rack price.
Right, right.
And the baseline budget was up 6% on last year, right? The prices are down about 45% from last year. So as predictions go, it's probably sensible to make something closer to a more accurate prediction.
Right, I just wouldn't be comfortable doing that kind of predicting it. What we were able to do is say, this is what we expect to save this year. If the board wanted to, make a decision about adjusting the baseline number down, that would be up to the board.
Just to be clear, the baseline budget assumption of 6%, add 6% on last year's actual to get to 2 years later's anticipated actual. And so there's, to Greg's point, Eric, there's enough distance between those two that you may or may not want to ride with the absolutely beautiful pricing that's occurred from September until right now.
I just feel a little funny making it a higher number in an environment where the price is dramatically lower.
Yeah.
And what's the amount in there right now?
94? Last year we spent 88? Or this year, whatever, 2015. So,
Well,
we're
what's your
talking about
recommendation?
basically next winter, right?
Yeah.
So,
But this number is based on last one.
Is based on last year's actual. Yeah, just
I
so
don't- obviously-
neither of us disagree with any conclusion you reach. We just, it's far enough out there that we have a
and
tendency to lean
what's the window
conservatively.
for locking in a price for next year? What's the window for?
Typically, if you choose to lock in pricing, you do it in the May timeframe of each year for the following year. This
Right.
board is probably in 10 years locked in pricing 1 year. And the rest of the years, they've gone with a floating price based on the price accrued at Albany.
Right.
That's when we look at that decision with you.
Because it feels like that's only a few months from now, right? I mean, and obviously markets can change, but we may be, I think, and being a big buyer, who knows, maybe you can pick up the phone and say, look, I know you'd like to have this phone call in May, but we want to talk right now.
You're our biggest buyer. You're the only school left heating with fuel oil, so. So.
We're so progressive.
You're our leverage. But I don't think he and I would object if you took $6,000 out of fuel oil next year. And we promise not to remind you of this conversation next year when the chart spikes the other way. What's happened is remarkable. I mean, nobody really could have anticipated that, and there's a lot of people who locked in this year and are regretting that they did that.
Right. I'm just saying for this discussion, I mean, we don't have that information right now, but I mean, to have, maybe spoken to our dealer and said, hey, because the futures market exists, right? That might just be
Yes, that's what they do in May. They go out and buy enough in futures to cover whatever
Right.
commitment they make to all of you.
So they could just easily do it now if we asked them, maybe, I don't know, just a thought, because it is, like you said, it's pretty extraordinary circumstance, and that would, I guess for the purposes of this discussion, I'd certainly be happy budgeting a bit less than, not just the baseline, but what we had in last year's budget.
So what's your recommendation? Since we do have to arrive at a number tonight, ideally. And I'm putting you on the spot just because I feel like you're the person here who.
Yeah, I don't want to hold myself out as some sort of expert on the energy markets, other than to say that.
So how about go to 88 for this year?
Yeah, I mean, at least 88, if
Yeah.
not 80. I mean, let the board kind of chew that one over, but.
Anyone else want to weigh in on a number for fuel oil?
I'd be comfortable with 80. I mean,
Okay.
I think you'll be safe there.
Okay.
I guess I'm comfortable with that. We have propane at home, everybody knows what happened, anybody that heats with propane saw propane go up 60% last year. I mean, it's a little bit playing around, but that's even at 80, we're still got a cushion, I think, to play with. Carrie's got a cushion down back, she's raised her hand a couple times.
So we have it in there as 94, we're contemplating doing it at 80. Carrie?
I just was curious who we buy the fuel from.
I think it has to go out to bid, right?
Yes.
It has to go out to bid because it's a large.
Every summer.
And so would Royal Fuels and Patterson Fuels, our local fuel dealers, and maybe there's more in town that I'm not aware of, but do they provide you with a number, or have they, do you know, a recollection of that?
I don't have the data in front of me, but they are part of the 6 firms on the bidders list that are traditionally interested in providing fuel to schools in this locale. And so bid documents are sent to all of them, and they respond if they're interested in that kind of business for the following year.
And if you have any pull with them, Carrie, you tell those guys to give us a low number.
I'm not sure what our because we really don't talk about the school a lot, because we talk about saving money as a whole, but I don't recall Peter or Mo saying, or Jason, that they provide fuel for here. I am going to ask them now about that, but I also know how well they work with our community and our school. So if we're not working with them right now, we should be looking into the future on how they could help us, because we're not ready to stop burning fuel. Not everybody is against big oil, and we will be using them for a while as we go forward, and maybe there's a way to pull us together as a, bigger, more conversation.
Right. Jill?
So with the cost of oil being so low, we should be saving money on this year's budget. So if we save, say, $12,000 this year, because oil is so low, let's take that money in reserve and put it towards what we're talking about, which is making a number of 80. And we should be saving money this year.
Yes, you're absolutely
Yeah.
correct, and that's exactly why they're saving
if we're saving money,
$180,000.
We're not passing that on to us. I mean, we're still keeping it in the kitty, basically. So if you're gonna make the number go back down to 80, we still have that slush of what we're saving this year.
Right, and that is it. That is the estimated surplus that's on the second sheet, and that is the number we're contemplating how much fund balance to apply towards this budget. So that is, they've calculated what they think will save in oil, among other things. Yeah.
They have the access to all these numbers that you guys, we have, so.
This was the first page, I think, right?
The second, yeah. So yeah, the central office and probably Greg and Audrey too work hard to try to figure out where are we going to end up. I mean, it's hard for them to know where we're going to end up June 30th, but their best estimates are on this second sheet, and that's, as a board, we have to decide how much of that to apply, and that was the conversation that Eric had about how, what percentage should we have in reserve to be fiscally responsible, and how much should we try to offset our costs to reduce our overall budget and the taxes. All right, so we're all comfortable with 80? Okay. So can we reduce the fuel oil line by $14,000? $14,130. And were there other things on here from the board that I've forgotten that we were going to reconsider? Okay. So is there, okay, and if you could stand up and say your name. Thanks.
And with some of the things getting cut and reductions, I'm wondering if we can talk about the school counseling position that was reduced. So we've said that there was a lot of discussion about the behavior specialist, not necessarily this evening, but I know Gary filled a lot of this in. Some of the things that the school counselors do as kind of preventative measures so that we don't have to always escalate to a behavior specialist. And so now we've reduced the counseling position and we've not agreed to the behavior specialist. I'm wondering if there could be any discussion about that?
Sure. Anyone want to weigh in?
Well, so the reduction in the counselor is tied to the hiring of the health educator, right? So, yes, there is a reduction on the counselor side, but that's because we're hiring someone in a different position to take over sort of part of what's done there, and that's the thought, anyway.
I really like that logic, though. That's helpful, Debbie. That's, I mean, it seems to make sense if we're not going to have a behavioral specialist, that we go back up to a full-time counselor instead of taking out, .1 of that position. Even though it was meant to be for health,
Right.
maybe that can also support what's going on with behavior.
Do those tests overlap with what the counselor did or with what the behavior specialist would have been doing?
The task of what the school counselor was teaching? No, they're separate. They were separate pieces.
But is there a way, as we've heard, that the increased behavior needs, that it's sort of all hands on deck dealing, that you two have to jump in, that both Kathy and Vicki are having to do things sort of outside of their job descriptions? Is there, just sort of to Debbie's point, like, is that a place where we could help, sort of put our thumb in the dike for now, until we reconsider the whole behavior piece? I mean, does that make sense to you? I know you're on the spot here, but is that something that we should consider, or something that, or not?
Well, as you heard us say in previous meetings, the school counselors do get involved with supporting students across the tiers, and in terms of our overall system, you have the school counselors, you have Mike DiNicola, you have the administrators, and we all, to some extent, jump in on behavior. So the impact of the behavior, some of the behavior we've seen this year has impacted, again, you've heard us say this, some of the more preventative stuff that we like to be doing to stay in front of behaviors. So there has been an impact on the school counselors.
However, with the reduction of having the health educator come in, we'll have more time for the school counselors to do school counseling work, as well as to help support behavior. A large part of the middle level school counselor is teaching health education.
Okay. Any more questions on that? Anyone want to make a change to?
I know, it's almost
anything?
Julie, I just have a question. What's the health educator? I guess, is that the nurse?
No, so we've added a point for, we're required to deliver health education.
Okay,
To the. Whatever the curriculum is.
Whatever, yeah, okay.
We have not had a licensed health educator.
Okay.
Here before, so it's sort of been piecemeal with various people teaching different parts of the curriculum. There was a study, I don't know how many years ago,
So that person doesn't
that said that
exist.
this is what we are
The
supposed to be doing, and so that the administration this year felt like we were in a position that we should move forward with getting a part-time health educator, licensed health educator.
Okay.
Yes, and can you say your name, Fritz?
My name's Fritz Teggett. I had a question on the same topic, and I apologize because I missed the last meeting, and it may have been answered. But as I understood, that there was a teacher had to be present when a counselor was teaching some of the health education things. And now you have a full-time or a licensed health educator who does not require the teacher to be there with the counselor. What does the teacher do?
Just to clarify, our SAP is not a certified teacher. So when the SAP, the student assistance professional, is teaching drug and alcohol and other drug preventions, a licensed teacher has to be there to support behavior, because you have to have a licensed teacher in the room since she's not licensed. So they may help support or working on something else in the classroom. It's not the most efficient model, because whenever the SAP is teaching, I have to have another teacher in the room with her.
So now that you have a licensed person, you don't have to have another teacher?
Absolutely not.
And what is that other teacher going to do?
We'll look at the scheduling this year and have them redeployed working on other things.
Well, so actually, Fritz, you raised a good point, and the answer is there's been 2 other reductions in 2 other parts of the budget that correlate exactly to that, where teachers are moving
Probably
down.
the part I missed last week.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's a good question. The licensed health educator is less, just under a half-time position, and there's been a reduction of just under a half in other teaching positions that sort of correlate together.
There are other questions? Yes.
Kelly Julia. So I am a resident of the town, but I also am a teacher here. And thinking about the logic that was just presented around the cut for the school counselor, it makes sense to me as someone who is working with the people who are currently in the school and would be working with a proposed full-time behavior interventionist if the board decides that full-time behavior interventionist is not going to go into the budget. From my perspective as an educator, it would absolutely make sense to retain that .1 school counselor. Because Greg and Audrey brought forward the need for that full-time behavior person, and if that person's not going to be in the budget, my experience is that the school counselor is an integral part of working on a team for those kids, and so it seems like if we didn't put in the 1.0 position, not making the .1 cut would be a fair compromise and a helpful one as a classroom teacher.
Thank you. Is there any other audience? Carrie?
What was the non-intensive para, the 51,000?
We took that out.
Oh, they took that out, very good.
Yeah.
We cut that.
That's good.
All right, anything else from the board, or do we want to have Bob run some numbers? Oh, do we have a we don't have a technology number.
We wanted to revisit technology.
Well, technology hadn't, this point one.
Yeah. So is there go ahead.
So I know we kind of went over it once, but do we want to rethink that?
I do.
Okay.
I changed my vote.
Okay. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be a big compromise.
Okay. Clyde? And that's
We're down at the point.
number 4 on the change worksheet. So what they're suggesting
reduction
is
is now an increase.
no, it's
But-
just not a
yeah.
reduction, yeah. So to eliminate the reduction of .1 FTE school counselor.
So is that, what we heard from the audience? I mean, would you concur with that, Greg and Audrey?
I wouldn't disagree with anything Kelly said.
Okay.
Clyde?
Yeah,
Okay. Mark?
It's a good compromise.
Okay. I agree. That's a good compromise. All right, so adding back that number. So let's revisit technology. The total for the 3 line items was 24,750. Do people want to fund it at that or at a different amount?
I'd like to fund it at a lower amount.
I'm inclined to fund it, but I'm not inclined to say a specific lower amount. I think at this point, we just have to trust that the people involved will find the best deal for what it is they think that we need.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think we've, you know, been pretty judicious with the other non-essential stuff, so I think this is a good place to devote our resources.
Okay. So you're both saying the full 24.5, or 24,750, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. So that amount stays in.
What's your vote?
I would be inclined to reduce it a bit, but we have 3 for the 24,750. All right, so we could have a sing-along while we wait for Bob to crunch the numbers. We haven't voted on an actual budget, so once we hear from him, we can move forward. But go ahead, Carrie. Are you going to start the sing-along?
I just wondered if you could educate me a little bit why our kindergartners, first grade, second grade need iPods right this year, right now. And if you could just talk to me a little bit about me hearing that they're not learning cursive nearly, you know, and writing with paper and pen and pencil. And I understand I'm for technology, but I also am going to always be for the old-fashioned way of knowing how to do it with paper and pen. So why are we educating our little people so small?
Well, I'll just tell you, none of my kids have ever learned cursive.
And
My youngest
really,
is
do
in
you
6th
like
grade.
that, Kristen? Do you
Yeah.
like that?
I think the way of the world is they're not taking their notes in high school, or college are going to type them. But as for the you know, why are we using technology in the younger grades? I think, you know, when we were growing up, and even after most of us here were out of school, you know, technology was sort of an add-on. It was a way to more efficiently type your paper or whatever, and it's integrated in the curriculum itself. We have a technology plan for the whole SU. It's just a different world, and it's I don't know if anyone up here wants to speak more eloquently to it than that.
Just to put it in a little bit of perspective, Carrie, the idea that we have 40 iPads in the shared in the library right now. They're in high demand. The idea of adding this 20 just for the kindergarten through second grade students that's really 20 devices shared among about 120 students and 6 teachers. So we're not handing out iPads to the kids when they walk in the door. These are used for specific applications as a part of the day, as a part of their instruction, to give them something unique instructionally that they couldn't do without that device. It's not to replace reading and writing, and our focus in kindergarten and first grade is to get kids reading and to get kids to understand and take care of each other. That's our focus.
And add that, you know, what does technology look like 2 years from now? Like, say we didn't do the iPads, and will they get as good of an education for the next couple of years? And then maybe when there's new technology, add more, just, you know.
I think the iPad is a device that's
changes all the time.
and it's stood the test of time.
I see.
I have a 3 or 4-year-old iPad that I still use today, and it's still as relevant today as it was 4 years ago. So that's what we found to be really good about that device. And I wouldn't be recommending it if I didn't think it would enhance instruction for the kids in some way. Could we do next year without them? Yes. But I wouldn't
still
be.
get as good of an education?
Well, I think it would be, their education would be enhanced if teachers had more access to this.
And I guess when I think about it, I mean, the technology piece, you know, is big, but, you know, a lot of school districts in Chittenden County give iPads to every kid. I mean, we're kind of lucky that in our community, most of our kids have access to technology at home. But we'd be looking at a much bigger budget if we had to provide those devices to let our kids have them at home. I think Julie first in that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Clyde.
I agree with you, but there's a but. You know, the research is clear. Learning cursive, there's really not anything else around here that parallels that for fine motor skill development, and the research is clear that the fine motor skill development leads to intellectual development for which there's no substitute. The but is what they've all been saying about the pace of things. I think we should be teaching cursive writing, but they're not going to be doing their homework in it.
Okay, Julie?
I'm Julie Wade. I'm one of whom is in 3rd grade, and he's doing cursive. They're doing cursive in their class now, so they are learning it at some point. I also have a kindergartner and a 1st grader who are benefiting exponentially from the use of the iPad, the Chromebooks. It's enhancing what they're learning. They come home excited every day about what they're learning here, and I think that the technology, access to technology is really a big part of it.
Thank you. Tammy, next.
Do we not have any kind of estimate about what percentage of Charlotte children do not have access to technology? I mean, we live in a wealthy community where don't these people have them at home, or do we have an idea how many don't?
Yeah, no, I was just saying we're lucky that most of our children do have access at home. And a lot of other school districts in the area, budgets include providing at least middle level and older kids with a device to take home. We don't do that here routinely. I mean, I'm sure we probably provide it for some children, but it's definitely not the majority.
As a senior at CBU this year, they've just started piloting them into certain classes stuff. Just barely at that level. Do you think our younger kids can do without them for another year while we get the budget under control?
Well, let's see where our budget ends up. I don't know if Bob's on with the number, but did you want to say one more thing?
I sort of fight the technology thing personally, but I'm learning, I mean, I do with my boys just because, I don't know, it's hard for me, but I have to back it 100%. I mean, we really do need to prepare the children for the world that they are actually going to go out into. I mean, we no longer use a card catalog in the library. We have to teach them how to research so they can write papers and navigate through the electronic world. I mean, you go to rent a car these days, you have to do it on a, or take a flight somewhere. And I mean, if you don't know how to navigate, you're lost. Everything we do now is electronic based. So, I mean, as much as I would like to say hold off,
Less screen time.
I have to back it 100%.
All right, Bob, do we have?
If I correctly described your conversation, you've chosen to take out $146,000, and the budget, your new budget number would be $7,595,996, or a 1.12% increase. You want me to give you that number again? $7,595,996.
Is that not,
So, and that doesn't include the fund balance. How does that work?
You decide what you're doing with the budget, and then as a separate conversation, you decide what you're doing on revenue, and in particular, fund balance. So that would be the next conversation.
Okay.
And if you put this conversation together with the next conversation, like you did in a question to me earlier, then you're leading to a tax rate decrease rather than a tax rate increase, I think is what I told you. Am I correct?
Yes. Okay. So are we, I guess, before we vote on this, can we look at what the numbers look like with the fund balance?
With the fund balance applied, your net spending comes down by both the increase in revenue and the lowering of expenses, such that the new tax rate calculation leads to about a 0.7% decrease in tax rate for Charlotte Central School.
so that's assuming, you're saying we Voted no on the surf.
I assumed you did not want to include the surf.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, you want me to run down through what I took out?
No, now I agree with you. It wasn't clear to me the conversation that I was a part of. It was my own fault.
Okay. So, should there be more discussion on the budget part? Do people want to talk about if 180 is the amount we want to apply? If people want to apply a different amount in fund balance? Just want to make sure.
I think that's an appropriate amount.
It's at this point that we arrive at the difference in the conversation between dollars and philosophy. Taking money out of the fund balance may be a good idea, but it does not really address how we got into the condition. And while we've done an admirable job here this evening of refusing some things or adjusting some things, there is still the issue of whether or not we need a co-principal in this school. And if we're taking $180,000 out of the fund balance to make this thing work, how many years can you do that? If the balance is 442 now and it was expected to go up by whatever, there's only 2 or 3 years of taking that out, and you really have not addressed the underlying issue. It's the philosophy that determines the dollars and cents. So my overall reaction is I would not take money out of the fund balance. I would present it as it is with what we've done here this evening and see how the people feel about it. I think that taking money out of the fund balance to do that is really a red herring that confuses the issue.
Sort of by the same token, I think having collected what turned out to be more than we needed gives the impression that we're spending more than we actually are. So there are two sides of that coin, but.
You always hope for fiscal economy on the part of the administrators and the people who are dealing with whatever the budget is that you've provided. But yeah, eventually it comes down to that. And yeah, sooner or later it catches up with you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay. All right, I guess we'll, 5.0 action matters, 5.1 approve bond vote. Do I have a motion to approve? Do I have to say this in a specific way, Bob? Do I have a motion to approve?
The bond vote is the 409,000.
Yeah.
Just approve the
Okay.
article as presented.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the bond article as presented, seeking $409,000?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Do I have a motion to approve the fund balance article?
Do you want me to paraphrase what you're planning to do? It won't read correct there because we didn't know what you were going to do tonight, but the article will in essence read to take 180,000 of your current fund balance and apply it as revenue for the school year 15-16 and retain the balance of your fund balance monies as revenue for future years.
Do I have a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? 5.3, adopt fiscal year 16 proposed budget. Do I have a motion to approve a budget? So it's for the 77.5, not the 74.
$7,595,996.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the budget for fiscal year 2015-16 in the amount of $7,595,996? $595,996.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 5.4, do I have a motion to adopt the annual articles and warning as presented with the only change on this draft will be the amount of
The
money.
fund balance article will change, the amount in the budget line will change.
But other than those, I think the articles look pretty good.
Okay.
Okay, and Sandy will do those while you break.
Right,
So that you'll
okay.
sign coming out.
All right. So do I have a motion to approve the annual articles and warning?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5.5, do I have a motion to approve announced tuition?
I have adjusted your announced tuition worksheet to put the budget of 7,595,996 at the top. And then do the calculations such that you want to approve an announced tuition for next year of $14,601.
Okay. And we use it on that amount, not on the lower, not on the amount after we apply the fund balance.
Yes, this,
Okay.
it's prescriptive on how you calculate it.
Okay, I
and
just
it
wanna make
doesn't
sure.
Doesn't include local revenue.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve our announced tuition in the amount of $14,601?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. 6.0, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. 7.0, discussion matter. 7.1, annual meeting and budget vote presentation. All right, so our annual meeting is at 7 o'clock on Monday, March 2nd. So, anyone have any ideas about preparing for the meeting? We typically do a PowerPoint that is largely prepared by Bob and his staff. Is there a desire to do anything above and beyond the presentation of the budget in that way? Okay. I think we should probably work on getting an article explaining, you know, our decisions to the papers and.
And do we need to do something about an architect for the 409? We talked about, I think you had a meeting set up on the 16th of January.
So,
Yeah, when's the facilities committee?
we met yesterday.
Oh, you did, okay.
For this meeting. Yeah, we can ask Lee or Ronnie to come to February, maybe. We can talk to the architects and see if we can get somebody to come in February and just answer questions if there are any around that number.
And maybe we can add it to the. I'm sorry. So we're talking about having an architect present at the February meeting, hopefully, to address specific concerns about the bond, and maybe also, Clyde, you had some other questions about the other, right.
About other concepts,
Okay.
and these folks might like to hear it.
So if we have Lee or Ronnie come, I would assume more likely Lee, since he lives here in town, maybe we can talk with Elaine about adding that as an agenda item for February, so we can look at both parts.
You should also have Dave at that meeting.
Okay. We can talk about that.
You would have an architect present, but no type of builder or anybody present? I'm just thinking, an architect, isn't it more design recommendations, but a builder could give the insight into constructural relevance to the project?
So I'm calling him an architect, because that's the way I view him, but he's more of our project manager on these sorts of things.
And he has a team behind him.
They're the same folks who did the contracting for the wing that was built down here, and yeah, the numbers that we get for that sort of thing come from him. Is that what you're asking? No. If it's not, tell me.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, no.
Absolutely, the whole thing goes out to bid. The architect has a team of engineers who are providing him good advice to the school on what they consider at this point in time. But once it moves into a full-fledged project, it's broken down and it's put out to bid, just as the $2.5 million or $2.8 million project was. So you get the benefit of everybody looking at being part of the project at that point in time.
And just to let you know, excuse me, but when they put things out for bid, they don't have to take the lowest price.
Right. I have one other question, I'm sorry. I'm sure you've addressed this in a different meeting, but it is my understanding that is your plan to replace the second principal as opposed to going back to one. Is that true?
Well, we've never had just one. Years past, we had a principal and an assistant principal. They were both full-time positions.
In '93, we only had one.
Oh, that was before my time here in Charlotte. So we had Monica Smith and Katrina DiNapoli were both full-time administrators. It was a different model, but it is the majority of this board's decision to continue with the model we have now, where both principals have responsibilities sort of general to the building, but that their focus as educational leaders are divided, with one focusing on the middle school and one focusing on the younger grades. Yes.
So we do know that that subject is the most hottest subject of all in all community members' conversations. No matter if you're for or against both two principals, it is always the biggest and the most talked about conversation of all with the school. So what you did, Audrey, was really, really cool and great in many people's eyes. I think it was a very commendable thing for you to do. I'm sorry that you had to do that. I think it's part of that state overall, problem that we all are facing, that you hit that. I'm not here or there on two principals because I don't know how you want to work your business here, but I just know that it is the most talked about thing all the time since the day that it happened.
Is there cost-saving advantages to not having co-principals?
Yes.
Well, if you had one, I don't know if we could find someone who would be willing to be the administrator. We probably could, but what we've been told as a board is this: we would realize very little, if any, savings if we switched to a principal, assistant principal model. And the other disadvantage, I don't want to get into too much, it's not an agenda item. We can definitely put it on in the future to talk about again, but there's a lot of turnover when you have an assistant principal. They use it as a stepping stone to, get to be a principal somewhere. So you sort of have that expense, perhaps, of having to, hire more frequently than you might.
But if we could save $40,000, the community would be very happy in saving $40,000 and paying somebody to, help the principal, or, it's not that you want to eliminate a good job completely, it just doesn't maybe have to be as high paying and yet still be a great opportunity for someone to do that sort of work, to further their studying.
And I'll tell you, we've discussed this a lot. I know a lot of people don't come to our regular meetings, and we also discuss some of it, when there aren't people here. But it's not like we are deaf to what we're hearing from the community. And we also hear from people who are very happy with things as they are now. So it's not like we just haven't thought about it. We've made a choice that it is probably unpopular with some, but that's the choice for this budget. Monica, can you say your first and last name?
Hi, Kristen. Monica Marshall. Well, I was here when, years ago, I represented the Charlotte News in selling ads. And one of the things, as you can hear, there's a lot of misunderstanding. There is the perception that co-principals is something that's not necessarily needed. And what you in your little thing was discussion matters, annual meeting, and budget vote preparation. This should tell you, you need to be very direct in your communication with the community why you decided to keep 2 principals. Because I've already talked to 3 of my neighbors who have no kids, and they've all stated they're gonna vote the budget down because of that one reason. So you need to get somehow, some way through papers, through whatever venue you guys decide to go, but you need to make it really clear to the community that has no students in here and have to put their houses on the market, why you made your decision.
Thank you.
So,
And that is happening.
All right, 8.0, oh, Jill.
Can I just ask for one request too, when you put out your statements on why you want people to pass the budget, there's a couple things that my husband wanted me to ask too, is there's never anything that's clear in our paperwork that says how much money Charlotte sends to the district office, CSSU district office. Like, there's not a line item exact number. Unless, Bob, you can tell me the exact number that Charlotte sends to, because once again, we're always talking about Charlotte cutting our budget. You know, unfortunately, a lot of us cannot go to the CSSU district meetings. You know, and if I look at here, under here, the percentage went up, I think,
Well, the percentage went up a ton.
$19,000 just this year. If we pay total administration, other support, that's what I think, what does that go to? I mean, I guess we just want a number from Charlotte Central, what we pay the district office on a yearly basis.
Well, I mean, it's hard to compare this year to last year just because all of special education went there, so several million.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Are over there.
So we're up to $2 million from Charlotte Central, sending that to the district office. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. The 4th line down on your budget document by object is CSSU Assessment and Purchase Services. So it's very visible anytime you look at a budget for Charlotte. And to the point you just made, it went up from $440,000 last year to $1,989,000 in the current year, in large part because you're obligated as a district to transfer all of your special ed expenses to the SU as of July 1st this next summer.
Services and to what you give to the district office, that would be great.
Oh, so, yeah, it'll be broken off with special ed and the cost of the other stuff, yeah. Okay, good, we'll do that.
Thank you. And just the last thing, if we take the final budget of $7 million, sorry here, there are too many papers here. I came up to $18,807.84 per pupil out of 406 kids. I don't know if that's what everybody else gets, but just to let you know.
Okay. All right, director's comments. Do you have any, Clyde?
I would not sign any contracts prior to the final resolution of the budget.
I'm sorry, what does that mean?
That means I would not hire another co-principal until you find out if the community is going to approve of the amount of money that you want.
Okay. Eric?
Yeah, so my comment is I would have liked to have the structure of the Office of the Principal as an agenda item.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't clear to me that we ever did actually discuss and decide on the co-principal model. So I don't know, did I miss that?
Well, we had a session where we talked with Elaine about her recommendations for administrative structure.
Yeah, no, I'm clear what
Yeah.
Elaine wants. I'm not clear that we accepted that entirely, or that, I mean, I understand why the budget includes more than one individual in the office of the principal. Whatever structure would be in place would unlikely be a single human being, whether it's co-principals by grade or principal, assistant principal. You know, it was clear to me what the recommendation of the superintendent was. It wasn't clear to me that we entirely agreed on adopting that.
Okay, so do you feel there's a need for a special meeting before our February meeting to discuss that?
I kind of do, or at least before we hire someone. I guess at that point, it's kind of too late, right?
Well, we could add it to the agenda in February.
All right, well, maybe I'll run it by, I don't know what the timeframe is for the post, you know, and see if it makes sense to try to do a special meeting in between, because we haven't had enough meetings lately with all the budgets. Okay, I'll follow up with, oh, all meetings are, yes, yeah, yeah.
So if things haven't been noticed as well, or posted, I should say, as well recently, we had a hard time finding out when this particular meeting was, because it's in some places or maybe not others. And then the meeting back in December was missed by several people just somehow. So I'm just letting you know that
Okay.
there just was, especially the one in December. This one here I knew about for a week or so, but that's because I had to call the main office and find out when that was, because I couldn't find anything in my store or, you know, whatever
Okay.
about when this particular night was.
All right, thanks. We will, okay. We'll look
other
into
people
what our
did too.
deficits are and try to improve, for sure. Thank you. Susan, do you have anything?
Well, we're gonna put on the agenda the co-principal model.
Yep. Mark? We could bring more chairs. We could convene somewhere else, but even at our fullest, I think the library can can fit people. And my director's comments are, thank you, Audrey. We wish you the best. I know we have the benefit of your hard work and experience for the next several months, and thank you, and best of luck. All right, 9.0, confirm next meeting dates. Our regular meeting, next meeting is February 17th at 7 o'clock at CVU in room 162. The next Chittenden South Supervisory Union Board meeting precedes it at 5 o'clock in room 160. The common topic, if people are interested in coming, which starts at 6 o'clock, is early education. And do I have a motion to go into executive session for purposes of personnel?
So moved.
Is there a second?